Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're in the greenhouse starting some onions from seed. I've got 3 different varieties here, the Walla Wallas, Candies, and Yellow Sweet Spanish. Those are some of my favorites, but we're gonna also head down to the garden center and pick out 1 or 2 new varieties to start this year as well. This is one of the first food crops we get started. I do have some artichokes going as well, and then we'll be starting in with peppers next, maybe some eggplant, and then, you know, it just starts to amp up from there. But it's always fun to have some things to work on this time of year. Typically, you're starting onions 8 to 10 weeks before your average last frost date, and we plant ours out earlier than our last frost date. So usually right around the end of January, first part of February is a great time to get them started. I ran into the root cellar this morning just to show you how our crop from last year is still looking. They're storing beautifully. And then I just grabbed a few out as examples, just some different sizes. Most of these, I think these are all Walla Wallas that we have left over. And they're a higher sugar content onion. Usually the higher sugar content ones don't store as long, but I don't know, they really seem to do well in our root cellar. We keep it right around like 40-ish degrees and the humidity right around 60-ish%. It varies a little bit, but they are not even sprouting yet. They look amazing. They're nice and firm, and it doesn't matter what size either. Like all 3 of these are firm. And we check our crop every once in a while. Like we'll go through once a month and just to see if there's any that we need to root out if they're starting to get a little bit too soft. But we haven't had to do that. And we use a lot of onions. I cook our dinner almost every single night of the week. I do try to make a meal plan at the beginning of the week, and that's very helpful, but I am in there all the time pulling onions out, especially because it seems to be the base of so many of the things we like to eat. There are 3 ways you can start your onions from seed like we're gonna do today. You can buy them as pre-grown little plants, little starts, usually in 4-packs down at your garden center later on in the season, or you can start them from sets, which are the little bulbs that you can buy usually in like little net or mesh bags. One major benefit of starting your own onions from seed, and this really goes for all seed starting, is that you get to choose the varieties you're growing. You're not limited by what the grower decides to grow that year, and when you're choosing onion sets, you're even more limited. Usually you only find like a red, a yellow, and a white, and maybe just 1 variety of each. Sometimes they don't even list a variety name on the bag. It's pretty like nondescript. So it's nice to be able to choose what you're growing. The other thing is that you get to control the environment. You get to control what products you're using on it, what soil they go in, what fertilizers they're given, and in our case we do all organic. It's just nice to know how that plant has been treated from the day the seed goes in the soil to the day you're harvesting it. There are benefits though to starting with plants. I've done it so many times. In fact, one year I planted my onions out too early, did not protect them, and they all got nailed, like the tops just got nailed. They all turned brown and flopped over. They ended up growing though. I left them in the ground. They were fine, the roots were fine, and they took off. But in the meantime, I did go down to the garden center. I picked up some packs because I thought, well, I don't have time to start seed at this point. So I have to buy plants to get them in the ground. And you know, it does save you time and you know, fuss, I guess, you know, keeping them watered and things like that. Sometimes it's nice just to have a grower do that for you if you're not particular about variety. Sets are also nice too in that they're very convenient. It's almost like planting garlic. You just pop them in the ground, they grow. The thing about sets though is that onions are a biennial plant, and when you're planting the little bulb, that's its 2nd year. So you're gonna get smaller bulbs as when you harvest because they're gonna be putting a lot of their energy into trying to bloom to set seed that 2nd year rather than in creating nice, huge, big bulbs. Sometimes that doesn't matter. They usually store pretty good though, any onions that come from sets. So there are pros and cons to any way you decide to grow them. Whichever way you decide though, onions are just such a rewarding crop to me. I don't know, onions and potatoes are 2 of my favorite things to grow. We usually grow a lot of them because we eat a lot of them, and they're just, I don't know, when you pop them out of the ground, there's just something so satisfying about it. So these are the ones we have on hand. We've got the Walla Wallas and the Yellow Sweet Spanish Utahs, which are long day, and then we have candy onions, which are day neutral. And that's really the last bit of information about onion varieties when you're going to choose which ones you're going to grow. Typically though, when you go to your garden center, they'll have appropriate varieties for your area, but there are long day, day neutral / intermediate, and short day onions. So the long days, like the Walla Wallas and Yellow Sweet Spanish, those require 14 to 16 hours of sunshine in a day in order to properly form their bulbs, which we have super long summer days here, super long and hot. So they do really well. Typically that means like a northern climate type onion, somewhere zone 6 or lower. And then your day neutral or intermediate type onions, like the candies that we have here, they need between 12 and 14 hours of sunshine in a day. Typically you'll find that in zones 5 through 7. And then the short day need 10 to 12 hours of sun in a day. And usually those are a great type for southern climates. usually zones 7 through 11. All right, so other than picking out 1 or 2 new varieties, I think we're ready to plant. Right now, I'm going to head down to the garden center and maybe we can pick out a couple of varieties together. And vermiculite. I'm out of vermiculite. We need more. Ooh, okay. Well, you know what? Maybe we should start some shallots too. So, yeah, let's do that. It says it's a rockin' storage onion with hot flavor and superb keeping qualities. These gorgeous long-keeping hotties will be the star of many meals. Funny. Boy, I just don't eat red onions very much. Hey, what's going on? Had to get some onions and shallot seeds. Oh, nice. I didn't even know I needed shallot seeds until I saw them. Oh. All right, so 2 varieties of shallot and 1 new variety of onion. I'm excited to try these. And there's not like a ton of seeds in each one of these packets. So we'll just do, several cells, but not as many as we do like candy onions. I have a ton of seeds for. That's the one benefit of getting them out of the bulk bins. I don't think I showed you today, but I have showed you before the wall of bulk seeds that's down at the garden center. I love that. It's one of my favorite things to do while I'm down at the garden center, to weigh out seeds and just talk different vegetable varieties with customers. It's just so much fun. So they're all tried and true things like the Walla Walla onions and really popular seeds that they sell a lot of. And you can get an incredible amount of seeds for a really cheap price. Okay, so what we need for this project, standard seed starting stuff. We've got our trays and I'm going to be starting them in these right here. We've got our seed starting mix. We've got our ID tags. And I have a little bit of vermiculite. I forgot to pick up a bag while we were down there today, but I think that will be plenty. Okay, so this is pretty routine. I'm gonna pre-moisten our seed starting mix, fill the packs with that. We're gonna be planting our onion seeds about 1/4 inch deep, but the difference here, typically when we are doing like tomato seeds, say, you do 2 seeds in a cell, and then you thin one of them out. In this case, these are pretty small cells. If they were a little bit bigger, I typically do 10, 15 onion seeds per cell. In these, I will probably do 6-ish seeds per cell. Still a lot of onions. And then, did I say we'll do that 1/4 inch deep? We top them up with vermiculite, which helps with moisture control. It helps with a lot of things. And then we dome them. Oh, I do make sure, especially when I have the trays out here, the 11 by 22 seed starting trays, these right here, we're gonna pop holes in the bottom. I want these to have drainage. I do not want to have any issues with water pooling at the bottom. Now, when you are watering these types of things inside, you're typically more controlled about it because you're using a watering can or just something that's easier to manage. When you're watering things out here with a hose, it's easy to overdo it. So it's always a good idea to provide drainage if you can. So I'm gonna get it all set up. I will slow things down when I get ready to put our first little batch of seeds in. And yeah, I think we're gonna end up with 2 trays today. Got a little too much in there. I want to fill them up to where they've got 1/4 inch lip still before we put our seeds in, and then we'll top them up again with soil. These seed packs are ready to go. You can see that I've got some soil packed in there. I left about 1/4 inch lip so that we can put our seeds in and then we will top them up with more soil. That's why I left them in my tray for now. Here are the Newburgh onion seeds right here. You can see what they look like, little black seeds there. So I'm just gonna take a few seeds, work it in this cell right here, and maybe like 1 for every corner and 1 in the center. There was already 1 seed in there. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is probably plenty. And I'm going to take my time with this process. You can see I think I got 6 in this cell. I'm going to take my time so that I can make sure that they're spaced properly because these cells are so small. But can we just wonder at the fact that this little black seed right here turns into this big onion in 1 season? Isn't that crazy? Gets me every time. Nature is amazing, and that's why we garden, right? Okay. This is going to take me just a little bit if I'm going to be meticulous about my seed placement. So here we go. We ended up with 3 trays of onions. I got the first 2 done, and then I was cleaning up and I was going through my seeds and realized I forgot to plant any of the yellow sweet Spanish. So I decided to grab just a smaller tray, one of the 24 cell ones, and planted one of those up. So we are gonna have so many onions. I'm gonna be able to give them to family and friends, let me tell you. Because like the candy onions, you may have noticed that these were pelletized. In fact, let me just get one out here. So they have that white coating, which does contrast the soil, makes them much easier to plant because you can see right where they're at. So it's very easy to space just 5 seeds in each one of those cells, which means just the candy onions, there's 270 seeds planted for those. We have a whole tray of the yellow sweet Spanish, which by the end I was just kind of sprinkling the seed in. Those cells are bigger so they can accommodate more. Based on what comes up, I will probably leave 10 or so plants in each one of those cells so you can see the size of that cell versus the size of these cells right here. Quite a bit different. So that will be about 240 roughly of the yellow sweet Spanish. And then the Walla Walla, I have these 2 rows. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 packs. And then in here, we have one of the rows of candy, but we've got the Ed's Red Shallot, the Zebrune, I don't know, shallot, and then the Newburgh onion. I did water these in just with a watering can. It's so much easier to do that out here versus in the studio, because in there I'm just very careful because I've made huge messes. Like I've watered the wall behind the grow light systems before. I've gotten it all over the floor. Out here it doesn't really matter. I can just kind of willy-nilly, but I did make sure to water them in just to settle the soil, make sure there was no air pockets or there wasn't any settling that I needed to fix, because that does happen sometimes. Even when you tap the soil, sometimes you miss a cell. Then I put the humidity domes on, and those will stay on until we have full germination on the trays. Once that happens, they will come off and they will just live out here. Now you can put them on heat mats if you want to get things going a little bit faster. That does speed up germination, but I don't really find that necessary. When you start early enough, you have the time just to let them come up on their own. They are more of a cold season kind of crop. You know, we typically harvest them sometime like right around 4th of July-ish, but we plant them out fairly early so they can tolerate pretty cold weather. And right now, I think it's like 70-ish in here. We have a high of 40 today, so it does warm up. Yeah, so it's 69 in here right now. Usually we start to see some germination in like 10 to 14-ish days. It can take up to 3 weeks. It can take up to 21 days to start seeing germination or start seeing the sprouts come up. So if you plant onions, just be patient with them. Just make sure to keep them watered. Don't let them dry out. And with the humidity domes, that really helps regulate things, and it helps keep them pretty moist. There's actually some days I completely skip and I don't even water my seed trays because I don't want to keep them too wet. And I think that's one thing that the vermiculite does help with. If you tend to be like an over lover of your plants and you tend to give them a little bit too much water, it can help regulate that a little bit. But I would say keep things monitored fairly closely so that you don't get too much in there, especially if you have trays that are holding on to moisture. The one last thing I wanted to mention, if you're starting fairly early like me, you may find yourself in a situation where the onions grow up pretty tall and they want to start flopping over. You can keep them trimmed to about 3 inches tall. And what that will do, by keeping them, you know, cut off, kind of like mowing them like grass every once in a while, it does help create a very robust root system. So oftentimes you'll see them all trimmed when you buy them down at a garden center. because that's what they've done. They've just kept them trimmed up so that they stay tidier in their trays and a little bit more compact, and they don't get all, you know, flopped over and mangy. One last thing for today, I did want to give you an update on our ranunculus that we planted up recently. Look at these. Oh my goodness. We're seeing some major green. Some of them are a little slower, but some of them were really quite like behind, and some were very, very ahead of the game. Like the roots were huge and they were already starting to send up some growth. But like, look at this one right here. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting to me. But you know, you can see some, like this one's coming up here. This one, there's like a tiny little shoot. This one's starting to crack through the soil. So we've got all different stages of growth here, but I'm overall like super happy. And one more thing, you guys, sorry, but I just noticed that we've got a tremendous amount of growth on these topiaries that we trimmed up not that long ago. It's been a few weeks, but remember they were those big mangy plants, and I talked about how to like select a kind of a leader, and we're gonna start forming these topiaries. Well, they were pretty, you know, scant looking, but you can see all of this growth. So we added some biotone starter fertilizer into the soil so they had a little charge up of food, and by trimming them back and that fertilizer, I think that just kind of spurred them on, because they are really starting to fill in, which is so exciting. And when you cut branches down, it promotes lateral growth. So like this one's a perfect example. You can see the main branch coming up right here, and I trimmed it right there, if you can see that, but then it's produced all of these side shoots. So that's what we want. We want these topiaries to bulk up, and then we'll manage kind of a nice little shape. I'm so excited about it. Anyway, guys, that is it for today. Just wanted to get the onions in. It's kind of a bonus that we got some shallots. I kind of forget about shallots, but I love to use them. So I'm excited to have those because I've never actually planted them here in this garden. Isn't that weird? Like you go along and you just kind of forget about certain things. So I'm very excited about that. We've got a lot of exciting things going on in here. And it always feels like once I start planting things like this, like the onions, our first like real food crop, it starts to snowball at this point. I think here in like 2 weeks, we're gonna start in with a big batch of stuff. So it's gonna get more and more exciting in here. I love it. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that this video was helpful for those of you who want to maybe try your hand at growing onions. It really is an easy, low maintenance process, honestly. They're one of the easier ones we start in here. So anyway, thank you guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.